You're listening to Themes and Memes, a different kind of movie review. My name is Adam from cerebralrevolt.com, and here with me I have my co-host Aaron from theageoftransitions.com. How are you doing today, Aaron?
Very good. I'm glad to be here for a new episode of Themes and Memes with you, Adam.
Yeah, it should be an interesting talk. As we discussed, in the previous installment, we were sort of talking about the fact that we were, going to sort of follow a kind of a trend here with the types of films that we're reviewing, because we reviewed, most recently the film Divergent, which was one of these teen trilogy novels turned into a film. It had a lot of parallels to the Hunger Games, which we just discussed, and we talked about the fact that there's a big trend going on right now with all of these, teen sort of films, typically about the future, typically about sort of some utopian or dystopian future, depending on how you view it, turned into films, in short succession very recently,
it's definitely a trend. It's a recurring theme, so it's almost like a meme. I don't know if it's right to call it a meme, but it's certainly a recurring theme we're seeing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's probably safe to say that it probably all started out with the Hunger Games. We saw there was the Twilight, and of course then we've had the Maze Runner as well. And now we've got this film, of course, Divergent. The most
Divergent.
recent.
Yeah, there's so many.
And then of course the one we're going to be referring to tonight is called The Giver, which was a 1993 novel. And I don't know if it's a trilogy or if if it's just the one book, because it does. There's an end. The ending is fairly conclusive, but it does leave certain questions unanswered, and possibly, an opening for a sequel there. So I'm not sure whether it is a trilogy.
I think this is a single novel in this case. Yeah, I know, but my wife had read it around the time when it came out. I'd never read this book, but she told me about it, and she said that she really liked it when she read it before. So, yeah, it's from a few years ago, so it's almost as if they dug it up to fit it into this whole teen dystopian theme movie craze that's going on. Like, we need to get any and every example of that we can. So they took this book from '93.
Yeah, it's amazing. If they're doing this digging around there, how much they're finding, but and how many books have been written throughout there was a lot of sci-fi in the 80s and a lot of this type of stuff in the 90s as well. And so many books that have been written. And usually directed at younger audiences, stuff that's on school reading curriculums and stuff, to do with these sort of utopian / dystopian futures, depending on the sort of, political belief of the author and whatnot. But I
think it's safe to call them dystopian.
I mean, I I totally agree. It's just that, like in this particular case, that it's always presented initially as being a utopia.
According to the storyline in the book, the prevailing government is always, convincing the citizenry that it's the perfect civilization. It is a utopia, and they have to uphold that. And inevitably, the main character finds out that there's something wrong with the world.
There's something wrong. Yeah, there's always the main character who's kind of set apart from the rest. And much like Brave New World, of course. Which was that was 1932 that was written, but it's the same thing. These are just just different re-renderings of that novel. That novel in many ways was directed at a younger audience. I think, not only a younger audience by any means at all, but partially at a younger audience, and it was included in many school reading curriculums. That book Brave New World, and we're seeing so many different, just as I said, just basically re-renderings and just.
The fact that this is part of the curriculum like that is definitely something we're gonna have to. We were talking about doing an episode just on these films themselves, and we'll have to get into the fact that they have been. A lot of these books have been part of school curriculums. I know that's the case with The Giver here, because my wife read it in school. As I was saying, she's read it. It was in school. So,
well, yeah. I mean, my mother, read Brave New World back in school, and in 1984 back in school. And I mean, I know people who are sort of in my age bracket who who were given 1984 to read back in school. In the UK education system. So I mean these novels are they're plentiful, and I think it's probably safe to say it all started out with Brave New World. But there's been a hell of a lot of them since then. Who all these authors are and why they're all just sort of heading on the same themes and memes over and over again, and basically retelling the same story with a slightly different twist in each scenario. It's just it's you could say it's a mystery, or you could say it's something a bit more deliberate and a bit more coordinated. But
and all the movies coming out right now at this time, what's going on at this time, that the movies. Well, it's funny. Saturday Night Live did a parody of all these movies and how they're all out now, and they joked on it. And of course, the joke was based on the Hunger Games did good, so there's money to be made. And certainly, I think that's true to an extent, but there's a whole lot more going on.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's always going to be a degree of truth to that assessment in terms of very. Just looking at it on a very basic level, of course, it's profitable to to pick up on whatever's popular and include it in whatever you're doing to sort of jump on the gravy train, and there's always going to be an element of that, but. And so people will always that will be the most obvious explanation that's given, to this phenomenon or attributed to this phenomenon is just the fact that it's people wanting to make money out of a popular theme.
Well, it's just like studying any occult subject, in that there's an exoteric reason for things. The exoteric in this case would be making money because a certain thing is popular now, so you keep doing it. But then there's an occult meaning that you dig a little deeper and you find more reasons for the same phenomena. And then you can go even further into the esoteric, where you get to the deepest level of, oh, I see, they really are they're really doing something here. And now I see the full picture of things, not just the exoteric. So that's going on with movies, I think.
Not just movies, and understanding geopolitics and sociopolitics and so many other things as well as the exoteric, understanding that's always presented is that so many of the problems in the world are just down to greed and a desire for profit. And while that's true on one level, it's only one relatively minor part of the picture. I mean.
Yeah, you got to look at the greater game itself, profit, and all. I mean, what is money? I mean, money's not worth anything in a second if the entire economy switches gears, or if it goes defunct, with a big economic collapse or what have you. Well, there goes all the riches that everybody accumulated, and now all the big shots are nobodies, just like the rest of us, or possibly, I mean, those who thought they were big shots at least are really nothing of the sort.
Yeah,
I mean. We're going off on a tangent here, but it's fun to do.
It's what we do here sometimes.
It's fun. But what
This
about
film.
the Giver? Let's get into that. Let's talk about the dystopia that's set up in this film. You've got a perfect utopian society, according to the government here in the book.
Post-war, of course.
Yeah, we've got social equality. We've got a strict set of rules. We've got no competition because that's evil. And we've got a citizenry with everybody just with first names, no last names.
No last names, yeah. So, again, this is, just like so many of these, dystopian, teen trilogy type novels and that have been turned into movies where the society is set in some kind of post-war scenario in the future. I mean, in this particular case, it happens to be 2048. And they refer to the war as the ruin. They always have a sort of a colloquial sort of description of the events that led to the society they're living in. In other films they've had the fall, and this is the ruin, and there's always
in capital
terms.
letters. It's the ruin.
Yeah. And of course, whoever set up the system is basically once again, created like a completely technocratic, scientifically run society, very much like Brave New World. And we've got a caste system where you've got four basic castes, basically. I think it's what are they?
There's four casts in this film. I can't even see. It's already getting jumbled up in my head between this and Divergent. That's how similar they are.
Similar. Yeah, very, very similar. Yeah, I mean, this one's set in black and white, and it's kind of this.
Oh, I know. This one has like specific jobs. Again, like there's the ceremony of advancement, which is graduation day from high school, basically, and then the government gives you a specific job to do, and there are different jobs. But they assign you the job based on, what they think your abilities are. And there are only certain jobs and things like that. And you don't make up your own work or anything like that.
Well, it's basically broken up into four castes, and so, there's a number of different jobs within, those kind of broader fields, more specialities. But you've got planners, managers, workers, and scientists, so you've got four plus, but then you've got... in addition to that, and of course this ties into the main character of the film, Jonas, the young man, who's going through his initiation, or he's about to, leave high school and get, sort of inducted into whatever, caste or sort of group or area of society.
Yeah, he's off to find his career or be given his career.
Career.
That's
exactly.
That's what's happening. Yeah.
That's there's basically this kind of a fifth role in society that is only ever undertaken by one person, and that is the receiver of knowledge. And the receiver of knowledge is basically their job is to go out and see this character called the Giver, and the Giver lives right on the edge of the community. You've got the scientifically created community on the sort of a top of a hill, and it's surrounded by sheer cliff, and all you can see is cloud. And of course, the citizens are all told that there's nothing exists beyond the borders of the community. It's just sheer cliff and cloud, and there's nothing beyond. There's almost it's everything else was destroyed in the war, and the Giver lives right on the edge of that. Looking out into this kind of oblivious, nothingness.
He lives in a little temple, kind of like an Acropolis sort of looking building. And again, it's on top of a hill right on the edge, so it is very much an Acropolis. It's got that look to it and everything. But the actual name of the position is the receiver of memory. So this is memories that they're getting. Yeah. And the Giver himself is the receiver of memory, and the protege character is this Jonas. He's learning from the previous receiver of memory how to do the job. So they're both the receiver of memory, and then the Giver thing comes in later. Like, well, if I'm the receiver, what are you? Oh, I'm the Giver then.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose it's hard to kind of. I probably didn't get the terminology completely correct there, because you've got givers and receivers.
Givers, receivers, memory, knowledge. It's all linked together. The receiver of memory is the most knowledgeable person in the entire society here, in the community. Yeah. They call it a community.
But he's also the Giver, because he's giving it to somebody else. And so, I got a bit confused with that one. But that's kind of it's immaterial, really. Yeah. Just that particular aspect of it. But anyway, yeah, you've got the protagonist character. He is assigned this. Well, but before this kind of typical graduation initiation ceremony, there's some kind of a monologue at the beginning of the film with him talking about the fact that he always thought differently to other people, and he always imagined things that other people didn't imagine. He had feelings and kind of intuitions that other people didn't, other people never conceived of. So he's clearly setting him up as almost like a divergent.
Yeah, same concept.
Same concept. Yeah. And there's the particular society is it's very reminiscent in many ways of Equilibrium, the film Equilibrium with Christian Bale in it, because what happens in this society is that every morning you have to go and get your daily dose of a particular drug, which suppresses all your emotions, and so the whole idea is based on the idea that emotions are the source of all conflict, and of all pain and confusion and sorrow in the world. And so if we chemically, basically negate those emotions through these mandatory daily injections, then we'll have a peaceful and free society, of course, And so, it's all these scenes of these people sort of, sort of getting up in the morning and just kind of scanning their hand on this little, vaccine thing, or it
vaccinates them automatically. Just put their hand on it, and it does it every morning. It takes away their emotions, so it's a bunch of emotionless people just kind of fulfilling their function in society and just going about their day without the burden of emotion, because again, the society has deemed emotion as not just a burden, but the source of all the root evil in humanity had to be done away with to create this utopia. So to uphold the utopia, they got to completely suppress any and all emotion, because it's problematic.
Yeah, and it's not just emotion, of course. It's any sense of inequality whatsoever. So they have these kind of public service announcements, on the sort of TV screens and through the loudspeakers that are everywhere, and they sort of have these kind of these propaganda messages coming out the whole time about how we must take our morning injections because these will make sure that we never think that we're different than anybody else or better than anybody else, or that we're in any way unique, and this is the most important thing. We must uphold it in order to preserve the society we're in.
Yeah, so we've got a dystopian scenario at hand, and Jonas is a guy who sees things different. He's given his career path, which is a very unique one, where he receives the memories of the past, something which nobody else in the entire society gets to do. So he gets to learn about the past from his teacher, which has come to be known as the Giver, the Jeff Bridges character. And so he goes about learning all these secret things, and there's a lot of consequences involved in learning the truth of the secret history of the world, is basically what he's given.
That's right. Yeah, and so we follow him, going through his what they call the annual ceremony of advancement. Getting sort of, I think that's what it's called anyway. Getting assigned this
ceremony of advancement.
Getting assigned this, graduation, and getting assigned this role, and going out, and he's, as I said before, there's the monologue at the beginning of the film where he's kind of basically explaining how he's always a bit different, and he always kind of had more of an imagination, and he was kind of always more open-minded, and so he gets picked for this role, and he is sent out to to receive knowledge from the giver or the receiver, the Jeff Bridges character.
Yeah, the old receiver, which has become the giver. It's definitely the model of the old teacher, the old man, which is the teacher, and then the disciple being the young man. So this old man, young man, teacher and disciple relationship that we've seen lots of times before going on here.
Yeah, kind of the apprenticeship type scenario.
However, Jonas isn't the first receiver of memory to do this job. I guess a few years before, there was a girl in the same position as him that the Jeff Bridges Giver character was took on as his previous disciple, but something you're not told for a while until later in the film what happened to her, but of course you can, guess that she had some sort of terrible fate. And her name was Rosemary, a name that we've seen in previous films we've reviewed, certainly a symbolic name.
Yeah.
And Jonas, lots of biblical names going on here, like angelic names in this film. Lots of Gabriel.
Gabe. Yeah, that's right.
There's some other L name I can't remember, but yeah, there's a lot of that going on.
So Jonas is presented as kind of being like the Bernard character in Brave New World, as being someone who had some kind of innate desire to know more and to maybe experience emotion and to kind of open his mind and to go through some kind of awakening process. And so by going and, being assigned to be the receiver, well, he basically is sort of, he has these telepathic experiences with the giver, where they sort of, put their hands in their heads, like a Vulcan mind meld or something. It's not explained how this is done, but anyway, he transfers memories from the past, and he transfers sort of images and scenarios and just memories in all different forms.
He starts out giving him memories of what seems to be mundane things, like a sled ride down a hill. And then they get progressively more intense memories of like more violent things, of which he can't handle and stuff like that. But it starts out very mundane, but at the same time, to him, it changes his whole worldview just seeing those mundane things.
Yeah, because there were things that he'd never experienced, because he lived in such a controlled society, where there was no, they even have rules in the society where you've got like 5 rules, which is like use precise language,
that's right.
Wear your assigned clothing, take your morning medication, obey the curfew, and never lie. And so, he's living in a very, highly regimented society, and all of a sudden he's getting exposed to these memories of like, emotionally charged experiences, and so there's, even though it's kind of fairly mundane stuff, it comes later on, as you say, it's kind of, it sort of blows him away at first because it's totally beyond anything he's ever even conceived of, in this community that he's been brought up in. But yeah, things obviously get more intense as the receiver of knowledge. His job is to carry on the history, to be the carrier of history and to carry forward the true history of humanity and all the wars and the ugliness and all the horrible things that had happened before supposedly utopian society had come about. So he gets to see war and death and famine and plagues and killing and abuse and all these things, and it really shocks him, and he gets kind of unstable at some point. I can't remember.
Well, all that war and all that war particularly was the big evil of the past society, which brought about, what was it, the ruin? So that was the reason to bring about this utopian situation where, they eliminate the emotions and all that, because that's what leads to people committing violence to one another. So that's the big thing. They're trying to eliminate violence, eliminate war. That's the big one. They've eliminated war, but at a cost. But of course, nobody knows that it's at a cost because I think everything's perfect. It's that scenario going on.
Yeah, and of course, like as you would expect, as he becomes more and more knowledgeable and he absorbs more and more of these memories, whilst some of them are very shocking, he experiences some very sublime, beautiful memories and moments as well, sort of things to do with beauty and romance and love and all these types of things, and he tries to go and sort of explain it to some of his friends, and they just kind of think he's a real weirdo, because they're getting their daily injections, which suppress all of their emotions. They're just like, it's a different language to them. They have no concept to, of what he's talking about whatsoever.
Well, I liked that idea of, just everyday life suppressing the memory of something that is very real and that you could experience, but you just don't because of the way that your world has been structured. So you're blind to so much of reality would be right there for you to partake in, but you just don't know how to, and you're unable to. I like that.
Yeah, it is very interesting. But he does manage to sort of, towards the end of the film, start convincing. I think there's this. He's got like not a girlfriend, but like a female friend, and they're quite close. And he sort of convinces her to like not take her injection for one day so she could feel emotion, And they end up sort of doing some crazy sled ride down some structure or something. That they're
Yeah,
having
yeah.
fun.
It looks like the
Getting
St.
on
Louis
roller.
Arch or something. They ride down it on a metal baking tray or something. It looked
Yeah,
really
yeah.
dangerous. Actually, it looked
Yeah,
terrifying.
yeah, it did look. Yeah, I thought they were gonna like die when they hit the bottom.
They were fine. There was
Really,
grass down
yeah,
there.
they were okay, of course.
Definitely a big drop for your first ever sled ride. I gotta say that.
Yeah,
That would have
definitely,
intimidated
yeah,
me.
for sure. But yeah, what's quite interesting about this film, one of the things I thought is typically in films like this, where they're basically everybody's minds have been erased, their memories have been erased through genetics. I mean, of course, in this society, one thing that's probably good to note here is this. I think this book is the Giver was very much influenced by B.F. Skinner, the behaviorist book called Walden 2, which is very similar to Brave New World. It was very different in a lot of ways, but it also had a lot of similarities. It's about the ideal communitarian system.
Yeah,
And one of the ideas.
You were mentioning this book before we started recording here, Adam, and I had no idea that B.F. Skinner wrote this. I mean, I know of him, but I had no idea he wrote fiction or anything like that. So definitely mention this. This is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a weird book because it starts out with kind of political science type commentary and some sort of various debates back and forth about some of Skinner's ideas, and then goes into a fictional story, and then they have kind of a sort of a reflection upon that story, at the end. And I think this, from memory, there might have been, in the revised edition, there was like input from other kind of, psychologists and, academics and stuff like that as well. So it's kind of a weird book. It's kind of like, it's a non-fiction book with a fiction story embedded into it. Not very many people know about it, but, I picked it straight away because one of the production companies involved in this film was called Walden Productions. And Walden Productions happened to have based their production company on a lake in Massachusetts called Walden Lake, where the philosopher Henry Thoreau lived. It was kind of a pond that froze over, and he found it very idyllic, this particular philosopher, and he wrote a book about it called Walden, because he called it the Walden Pond. And B.F. Skinner then basically picked up this book and carried it around with him, and he used that book as the inspiration to write the book Walden 2. So there's a tie-in there where you've got, yeah.
Well, it's funny that he took it upon himself to write the sequel to Thoreau's Walden.
Yeah.
Humorous.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I mean, the Walden book initially that the Thoreau wrote was kind of more about, his own experiences in that scenario, and like B.F. Skinner sort of took that book and thought, well, what if we take those kind of the experiences and the kind of ideas and that he was expressing in that book and sort of turned it into some kind of socio-political philosophy, and then write a fictional story based on that philosophy.
Yeah, it seems a little presumptuous to write Walden 2, right? But I just find it humorous. I can't help myself.
I mean, the idea with the 2 though is the fact that there's in Walden the story is there's all these different communities which are kind of spread apart, and they've all got names like Walden 1, Walden 2, Walden 3, Walden 4. So that was where the actual title came from, was the fact that the particular community he's describing in the fictional part of the book is just called Walden 2 because that's the name of the community, rather than a sequel to the book Walden in this particular scenario. But yeah, I thought it would be interesting to mention that fact there. What I was going to get to here was the fact that in these types of scenarios, like these sort of future dystopian films and books and things like that, where memories are erased and people are giving drugs to kind of suppress certain emotions, or to control them and manipulate them and subjugate them in whatever way, and generally the idea is to completely erase the past altogether. That is the kind of, generally that's what authoritarians and totalitarians and despots,
burn the Library of Alexandria, that sort of historical example.
Yeah, and it's like, like Fahrenheit 451 and Orwell's quotes about who controls the past controls the future, and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, but in this particular scenario here, it's a bit different because they actually have a specific role for someone to carry the memories of the past forward. So it's kind of different. They actually do want to. They want at least one person to carry the history forward.
Yeah, and that person actually advises the senior council members of the government based on that knowledge.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. And I mean, it's not explained completely how, in this particular film, and I mean, I haven't read the book myself, but in this particular film, how the governing structure works. But it's kind of a communitarian setup. You've got a kind of a council of elders, and it's supposedly all kind of based on caste and genetic kind of suitability for the role. But just like any other sort of premise of this nature, we find out that of course the people who are running it are complete totalitarians, and they know a lot of truth about history, and they know that what they're doing is about power and about control more than anything else.
And you get the Meryl Streep character being the main sort of matriarch character. It's similar to a lot of these other films. And Divergent, it was the same with
Kate Winslet.
Yeah, Kate Winslet. Yeah. She was the same character essentially.
Yeah. And there's a few of them. Although I can't put my finger on them, there's a few of these types of this whole idea that Elysium is another one. There you go. We covered that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That was Jodie Foster. That's right. Yeah. So this is certainly a running theme that we're seeing in these films. The female matriarch at the center of these dystopian governments. Yeah,
absolutely. And we can probably touch on that in some of the future discussions.
We'll have to talk about that later. That's important.
Yeah. So when we do some discussions on broader themes, we definitely touch on. Yeah, stay tuned.
Keep listening, folks.
Looking forward to those ones. But anyway, so it was kind of different in this film in the fact that you've got the society, however sort of totalitarian it is, of course it's got like any kind of supposed utopia, it's the what do you call it? The iron fist covered in the velvet glove. It's presented as being for your own good and for your own benefit, and we're on it together, and it's very collectivized, and it's very.
And the leaders actually believe that story too. They actually believe that, and they feel their obligation to uphold that. Their utopia. They believe in the utopia. They think that's what they're actually doing.
Yeah, and it's of course we see this in so many other films and books as well, in 1984 and Brave New World, the classics. The majority of people really do believe that they've been conditioned to really believe that what they're doing is correct and morally righteous, and that this is the only way that the society could function.
It's all they know. Yeah, well, it's all they know, except for the rulers are aware of the past, but they see the past as a great mistake, which can never be
they see it as a mistake and something that's dangerous as well.
Yeah, it's dangerous, and any and all precautions have to be taken in order to avoid that again. So they're willing to make dramatic moves and do some pretty serious things, like eliminate emotions via daily injections, in order that they don't relive that horrible mistake that they see as the glaring example of what not to do.
Yeah, I mean, if we were to go into the if we were to sort of speculate on the history of these systems, I mean, and we tie it into what's happening today and where things are going in the future. I mean, what we're probably looking at here is the people who are running these future societies, probably know full well that they're basically being dishonest, in terms of not sharing information, with the public that they really do need to know, and they are controlling them. Whether they really believe, it's a sliding scale as to.
It's like how much do they really think that they're doing good, and how much do they really know that they're being totalitarian dictators?
Yeah,
and you can kind of do both at the same time, because everybody justifies their own actions, no matter what.
That's right.
Everybody does that.
Everybody, absolutely, of course, and so it's good. It's hard to say, how how deeply do they actually believe in the cause, and how much of it is just, like lip service to the cause in order for them to stay in power, and perhaps, did their ancestors play a part in creating the conflict that basically was the excuse to create the system in the first place? Were they, are they descendants of people who created order out of chaos? Is this a continuation of the same, people who created the ruin in the first place? We don't know that. But
there's also the question that is arisen of, what sort of violence is this utopia actually committing, and saying and totally ignoring that fact. And lo and behold, it happens in The Giver, in that you've got these one of the positions that people are going to have is called a nurturer. You take care of the children that are, much like Brave New World, kind of genetically created, that are genetic assembly line babies that are nurtured by the nurturers, and then after that they're given off to their designated families.
They're adopted, yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is that some of these babies are, deemed not acceptable or whatever, they're flagged.
Genetically impure.
Yeah, so they've got some sort of problem with them. It's a technical thing. It's seen completely technically, and therefore the nurturer is given the task of killing the baby and just throwing it down a garbage disposal, and they go through it without any emotion because, they don't have emotions.
That was one of the most shocking scenes of the film, is we actually did see an infanticide. We saw a baby. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of weird because what happens is they live in a non-nuclear family where, the children have been, genetically created, and they've been, assigned these adoptive parents, according to genes or suitability or whatever. And
they're a family, but they're not. They're just kind of together, and they don't say they love each other. Nothing like that. It's all business.
It's all businesses, yeah, exactly. But the father figure, who is like, he looks like a brother or something. He's got no he doesn't look like the man of the house. He doesn't look like a father. He has no real masculine qualities or any, you know what I mean?
I hadn't thought about that, but that's, I'm sure, they meant to do that in the casting of that. I didn't know that before.
I kind of picked up on that. But anyway, his role was to work in these facilities of, the child creating facilities, whatever you want to call them, genetic engineering.
His job was as a nurturer,
And they came across this child who was genetically impure called Gabe, Gabriel, of course, the angelic name. He's found to be genetically impure, and they want to sort of get rid of him. But he decides, well, I'll take him home and I'll give him a few more days to see if he can kind of recover and get a bit stronger, and maybe he can not be killed off. So there's sort of express some sympathy.
It seems like he's having emotion at first.
It seems like he's having a bit of emotion. Yeah, that's what I was getting at. He said there's a bit of sympathy there for it, but eventually, when the baby doesn't kind of improve in whatever way it's supposed to improve, he takes it back to the lab and just gets an injection and injects it in the head with some kind of drug and just kills it straight away. And you actually see
drops it down a chute.
Yeah, we see infanticide. We see a baby being killed.
Yeah.
In a film which is directed at children.
Yes. Again, excellent point, Adam, where you're bringing up very intense subject matter that's being presented to young people, and definitely this wouldn't have flown 20 years ago. They would not have shown this in a film, just about any film, but certainly.
I tried to think, when I saw that, I was trying to think to myself, what films have I ever seen this before? A baby being killed, like clearly, very explicitly and graphically, and I couldn't think of one.
I can't either. And there's all sorts of terrible horror movies and things like that, but they never do this. Sometimes they'll intimate that maybe it happened off screen, or that they're gonna do it, and that's the big conflict. Like, ooh, the terrible monster's gonna kill the baby, and the hero's got to stop it, but it never gets to that point.
Whatever happens, it's not presented to you graphically and explicitly as it is in this film.
Yeah.
So that's a big kind of upgrade there.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it was disturbing.
That was disturbing. Yeah, but So where are we with the plot here?
Well, technically, I'll say this about the plot. You said that Gabriel was killed. Gabriel himself is never killed, but another baby is, as an example of what could happen to Gabriel, because he's marked for termination too. So Jonas, this is like Jonas's brother. You know, Jonas is
that's
showing
right.
emotion now.
Jonas takes Gabriel. Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
of course.
that's the whole thing. He knows that Gabriel is going to be disposed of, so his mission is to save Gabriel, which is like his brother now, and you know, take him away so that this doesn't happen.
That's right. Yeah, and so basically, what happens? You know, throughout the course of the film, we see Jonas becoming more and more. He stopped taking his emotional, emotionally suppressing injections, because one of the rules with one of the sort of allowances, shall we say, with the receiver, the person who's been nominated to go and, you know, receive the knowledge and the memories, is that they are allowed to break the rules that the rest of society has to follow. And so whether that includes not taking your injections, I'm not sure, but he does stop taking injections. He starts becoming much more emotional. He kisses the girl that he kind of is friends with and kind of likes, and, you know, they do all these kind of crazy fun things together, and he starts kind of trying to convince other people to sort of think outside the box and you know, think about emotion, and he starts trying to tell them that, you know, we're missing out on something here. We've been robbed of something. This isn't freedom. This isn't what we've been told it is. You know, we're missing.
He's seeing the reality of things.
Yeah,
and he's coming to the obvious conclusion that something has to change, and he takes it upon himself to do that. And he also has the immediate danger of his brother Gabriel being marked for termination, so that's thrown into the mix too. So as he's going about trying to save the world, he also has to save his brother, and they're kind of intertwined.
Yeah, and what happens with that as well is the fact that once he starts becoming troublesome to the society in terms of, you know, like expressing emotions to his friends and basically talking to his friends about how all this stuff is wrong and how we've been robbed here and we need to really break out of this prison that we're in, and, you know, things aren't, you know, the way they should be, and we're in an unnatural system, etc. The governing structure, especially the Meryl Streep character, sort of catches on to this, you know, and he becomes a target eventually, you know, towards the end of the film. You know, they basically say to him, like, you know, right, you know, this guy's going to be taken out. He's going to be taken down, you know.
And the whole time, the giver, Jeff Bridges, is kind of, you know, he's friends. He's the teacher. Jonas is the disciple, but they're kind of colluding, conspiring to, you know, bring about some change. And that's what ends up happening towards the end, is they're trying to carry out their conspiracy to take down the government. That conspiracy is found out by the government, so they're trying to stop the two receivers of memory, the giver and the receiver, and, you know, that's where all the action's taking place. Yeah,
it also leads up to that action of the ultimate sort of the revolutionary act of beginning, you know, and the conflict that creates, and of course, you know, he has drones sent after him and all kinds of stuff, and he puts the baby in like a bicycle, and he decides to basically just ride off the edge of this cliff into the clouds, and with a leap of faith, you know, literally. To see what happens, and he kind of lands on the bottom, and he goes into, I mean, outside the community is simply referred to like elsewhere.
That's right. Yeah. Well, he and Jeff Daniels come up with this plan that somehow it works out that if he breaks past the boundaries of elsewhere, the memories will be transferred to everybody in the community. It's never really explained well, and the sense that I got was that the book probably explains this fine, but the movie, they weren't able to carry that idea across in a way that made much sense. So to me, that was like, okay, what's going on? He's going to what would going to the boundary even do? Like
that was like the silly ending. It was kind of like that.
It got silly.
It's like you said, they probably, in the book, they probably went to lengths to kind of explain how that process worked and why that was the case. But of course, in the book, so in the film rather, you know, for whatever reason, you know, budget, time, whatever, it was quite a short movie. You know, they just
primarily,
I mean, they just rushed. It was just rushed. The last kind of 5 minutes is the idea that if he goes into elsewhere. And crosses the boundary of elsewhere. So he goes, you know, he travels out of the community.
Past this one tower specifically. Go past that tower and everything will be fine. It's like, okay, what's that?
Exactly right. And it's like he just has to travel beyond a certain point. And if he travels beyond a certain point, what happens is the memories of the past just flood back into everybody's minds, and the color, because it's a black and white film up until that point.
Yeah, that's right. And he starts seeing the color. Yeah, we didn't mention that, but yeah, it's
Yeah, he starts seeing color more gradually, increasingly as he's taking on more memories, but nobody else does, of course, and apart from his one girlfriend who he got to stop taking her medication. But anyway, the idea is that, once he passes, he takes the baby and rides across this desert, and he sort of passes this boundary. And as soon as he does that, all the color, all the memory, all the emotion, all the history, all that was lost, all that had been sort of all that had been hidden away or sequestered, or
it'll be made be made obvious in an instant. I see the beginnings of the metaphor that is likely in the book, but it just didn't come across in the film. Yeah, I definitely I can get a sense of it.
Yeah, you can get a general sense of it. It's just not there's nowhere near enough detail in the film to really sort of make a firm judgment as to how that process works specifically. It's just it's almost like a sort of a mystical scenario where just doing performing some kind of act, basically
a heroic act brings about great
a ripple of consciousness, and just kind of ripples across the community and just enlightens everyone and everything in one go. It's like the ultimate moment of arrival, of course. The climax of the film. So it was kind of silly in that respect, but probably because again, they didn't quite know how to or want to, really sort of translate the explanation in the book like into the film properly.
Yeah.
So
I guess we'll just say that he makes it to the boundary eventually. I will say that he has his brother Gabriel. They make it to the boundary, and then apparently everything changes. It's odd, but I did kind of want to make a comment about the end of the film, in that he makes it to the end of the boundary, and at the end of the boundary, it's a winter place, and he's riding the sled. Like, he rode the sled in that beginning scene where he's first given the first memory was of a sled, and he saw the same place to where he ends up riding in the end, where he goes past the boundary. He comes up to this house. So he and Gabriel come up to this house. Everybody's saved back in the community, which is this little island plateau above the clouds. And then I couldn't tell exactly what the ending meant. I could see a couple different ways to interpret it.
Yeah, it was almost like perhaps that was his real family that he was being reunited with in a way. Yeah. I'm not sure whether maybe that was one of the interpretations I possibly got from that. Yeah. Because that was kind of the as you said, it was the first memory, and it was kind of a premonition of what the ultimate last event in the film was going to be. It was like the ultimate revolutionary act of the film. The climactic scene. So.
I also thought it could have been taken as Jonas and Gabriel were pushed to the limit because they kept going and they didn't have any food or water or anything. They just kept going, and you could tell, like, I was thinking, with him carrying this, I was, and the whole time he's carrying the little baby, and I'm just thinking, like, how the heck would you do all this stuff carrying a little baby? Like, how is that even possible?
Somehow he goes off a massive, like, he rises up a cliff,
it's ridiculous,
huge cliff, and like lands, and like the baby's fine somehow,
But the implication is that he kind of did this impossible task. So it's like he ends up at the end, but what actually happened was that he died in the process, is what I was thinking. So it's possible that he died and reached this sort of like heaven sort of place, which was the same memory of him coming up to a house on the sled. And so you've got Jonas and Gabriel as kind of like these martyr characters that have actually died. That's an interpretation.
Yeah, because he was. That could be it. Because I mean, when he's given given that memory to start with, he the Jeff Bridges character, the giver, sort of basically alludes to some kind of importance that is related. He basically attributes some kind of importance to that particular memory and explains to him in some way. And I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was like, this is. He kind of gave him some little cryptic clue about what that meant, and that it was important. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So perhaps what he was alluding to was this was you're seeing your death basically, or your ascension to the next level of whatever to heaven, or
premonition of your own death. And, there's a lot of stuff that comes along with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And definitely the martyrdom, the hero, having to die to bring about the salvation of the rest of the world. There's definitely that going on. The other interpretation could be like you're saying, they actually made it to that real house. And that would have the implication that the community they were living in, the utopian community on that little plateau above the clouds, was only a small little segment of a larger world of which they had no idea even existed. And that's an interesting concept too.
That's I think that's the premise of the film, really. Yeah, I mean, because they're told basically that that the community is all there is, and that anything beyond the boundaries of the community is just referred to elsewhere. And I think they even have a ceremony. Actually, it's very much like Logan's Run, I think, where people who have reached a certain age are kind of euthanized or something.
That's the implication. They're killed and they're returned to elsewhere. Or something.
They're returned to elsewhere. Yeah, exactly. It's like it's like there's a similar thing in Logan's Run. It's like carousel. The carousel.
Yeah, that's right.
Where people who reach a certain age are killed, and they're kind of they're given a spiritual explanation for it, like they're ascending to the next level, and they're all happy about it. And this is you got a similar thing in this film here, where like Nowheresville is kind of like the next realm in a way, almost. It's like where you go to die, basically. Yeah. And so that could fit into your kind of interpretation of him possibly.
And of course, as we like to point out here on Themes and Memes, it could be that both of these interpretations are correct, and that they could be both at the same time true.
Yeah, that is also possible. Yeah, because obviously what we're dealing with, in the sort of conclusion of the film here is something that is metaphysical in nature. And when we're talking about metaphysics, we don't necessarily have to have one singular, definitive, absolute explanation. It can be many, many things all at once. So that's definitely a possibility.
But yeah, that's basically The Giver there, another one of these films. Is there anything else, any other just little points you want to make on the film, Adam, that people should know about?
I guess it's just I think what what struck me again is this once again we're having a film a book that was directed at sort of young people, teenagers and adolescents, etc., being re-rendered as a movie, as we're seeing with so many other of these novels, and they're all presenting a very, very similar set of ideas. And there's a different spin in each of these films. There's a different scenario. There's a different kind of slightly different reasoning, but it's all basically the same basic premise. It's all basically some massive global cataclysm occurs, and the whoever's left, the remnants of the population, have to design some very, very strict form of regimented sort of authoritarian society, which is sold to the public as being egalitarian and utopian, and absolutely necessary to maintain peace. And so we're just seeing the same themes and memes come across again and again and again in different forms. Sometimes it's very, very much like the Hunger Games, where it's very there's a lot of poverty and disenfranchisement and subjugation and sort of boot to gun to the head, boot to the face kind of stuff going on, whereas and other ones it's kind of more like the Brave New World scenario, where people are kind of drugged and psychologically brainwashed into accepting their servitude. But regardless, it's the same basic themes and memes being presented over and over again to a young audience.
The young audience is what's key. Why is a young audience being presented with the same themes and memes over and over again? Is there a reason for that? And again, with the pushing of the boundaries is also important, with the witnessing an infanticide and a young audience seeing that. What does that do to a young audience? Even if it's a film that's portraying that as evil, it's still portraying that as a bad thing. It's portraying it nonetheless. What does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and of course this ties into the whole the socio-political and philosophical ideologies that are behind these movies. Because, these movies and these books that we've been talking about are obviously, inspired by books like, 1984, Brave New World, Walden 2, as I referenced before. And in Walden 2, one of the sort of tenets of the society was that, the family should be absolutely non-nuclear in nature, and that the child rearing was all community-based, that every sort of, it's like we said before, the children are manufactured and they're assigned, parents or, like foster parents. And, it's all about the sort of it's very collectivist, there's no sort of units. There's no sort of traditional family bonding of any sort like that. And of course, the completely controlled environment. And so again, there's so many tie-ins that have obviously been, inspired by these very, very famous books, written by, people like Huxley and Skinner and all the rest of it. And so we're seeing in these films, as I said before, in different combinations and in different ways of, presenting certain ideas and with different political twists to them, but we're seeing the same concepts that have been set down and laid down by these very, very influential academics down, through the 20th century. As I said, being illustrated over and over and over and over and over again in a myriad of different ways at books and films that are aimed at children. And I think that is one of the most, important points to take away, when you're thinking about this type of stuff, especially in terms of like the value system and the normalization of certain ideas that has been directed towards children, the idea of not having an actual proper family, the idea of, infanticide being okay, the idea of, living in a caste system and having, basically a government which, mandates that you act in a certain way and that you have to take drugs to suppress your emotions or whatever, just the same ideas. Yeah.
This is definitely something we're going to continue talking about. Probably do a special episode on all these films as a collective, because it's a collective process going on. We'll try to see what we can figure out on it. But for now, that was The Giver. I hope you enjoyed this review. We're going to be having another episode of Themes and Memes probably pretty soon for you, because we kind of have that one in the can ready to go, don't we, Adam?
Yeah, that's right. We weren't quite sure exactly what order to do things, but we've got this one and another one to publish, and then the next one is going to be the one we talked about before, which is going to be sort of like covering broader themes and memes and talking about like lots and lots of different films and lots of books and citing references and sort of covering themes and memes from a broader sort of context rather than looking at just one film. So I'm really looking forward to those discussions.
Yeah. So anybody who wants to listen to the podcast for now can check out ageoftransitions.com, my website. Subscribe to the podcast feed. They'll be posted there. And in the near future, we're hoping to have a new dedicated feed and website. So that's something that's in the works. We'll mention that real quick.
Yeah. People should look out for that. Yeah, there is going to be a Themes and Memes website coming up. So, yeah, look out for that one.
Yeah, so it was great to talk to you today, Adam. I look forward to the next episode. Yeah,
as always, Aaron, we always have an interesting chat, and it was another interesting conversation today. And I'm just really looking forward to really getting deeper into some of these subjects from a broader perspective and some of our upcoming discussions. So stay tuned for the audience. And once again, nice speaking to you, Aaron. I look forward to speaking to you next time.
Mm-hmm. Take care.
This interview was recorded on the 2nd of November 2014.